He was a crook, Wirbel said. They're all crooks. Who? I asked. The senator, politicians, worse than the mafia. What'd you say your name is? Hougan. Wirbel nodded and then noticed Andrew walking out of the bar. St. George! St. George! Andrew ignored him, doubling the pace of his exit. Other customers looked nervously at Wirbel and then returned to their own conversations. I think he's calling the airport, I said. I'm not going to any goddamn airport. To get a reservation for a flight to Atlanta, so you can go back home, to the farm, the kids, I'm not going to Atlanta. You aren't? He shook his head. I'm staying here. They aren't going to run Mitch Wirbel out of town. Besides, I want to see my girlfriend. You ever met her? I shook my head. Arguing with Wirbel would obviously be a waste of time, and I figured that Andrew, probably his oldest friend, could handle him. So, I said, changing the subject, how do you like our little town? Treating you all right, are they? He smiled. They're trying to pin my balls to the wall, and you ask me if they're treating me. Who is? The company, he said. Who else? The CIA. Why? They want to shut me up. They tried it in '74 with that phony fucking submachine gun rap, and that didn't work. And now they're trying to frame me on a dope charge. Can you imagine? Me? Dope? Who's going to believe that? Well, it ain't the first time. What isn't? It ain't the first time they've tried to frame this old Watusi, and it ain't the first time I've told the Senate to go fuck itself. It'll pass. The waitress arrived with a tray full of beers. Thank you, honey, Wirbel said. You're all right. Now just keep 'em coming. I knew what Wirbel meant about the Senate, and while we sat there talking, I thought back to his first encounter with the men on the hill, and I thought also about who Wirbel was and what he'd come to. After all, there was a time when he'd been called, and here one has to hold one's breath, such is the gall of Andrew St. George's imagery, the Wizard of Whispering Death. It wasn't a bad description either. 1. The CBS Invasion. In August 1966, Mitch Wirbel was a good deal more sober than he was the night I met him. He was also richer, and if there is any certainty in life, he was happier. A veteran of OSS operations in Indochina, he'd maintained friendships with clandestine services officers who'd gone on to high positions in the CIA and the Defense and State Departments. He had a top-secret security clearance, of which he was proud, and he let it be known that he was well connected with those who worked on the darker side of the planet's conservative governments. Among those whom he counted as friends, for instance, was Lucien Conein, an archetypical CIA spook who, as the expression goes, knows where the bodies are buried. Another friend was Colonel David Sterling, founder of Britain's notorious Tan Berets, a commando elite which, as the Special Air Services (SAS) regiment, has waged counterinsurgency battles against the Mau Mau in Kenya and dissidents in Malaya, Borneo, Cyprus, Aden, Oman, and most recently Northern Ireland. Others who sat down to Wirbel's table from time to time included Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis, the Commander-in-Chief of the Royal Thai Armed Forces, Walter McKem, a former CIA officer and expert in the international narcotics trade, currently for hire, right-wing Texas millionaire Bennett Bintliff, described by one former Wirbel aide, Kip Smithers, as a real wisp of smoke. No one knew where he came from, and no one knew where he went, as spooky as they come. The infamous Cuban exile leader Rolando Masferrer, international arms dealers such as Anselmo Allegro and Ken Bernstein, both from below the Mason-Dixon line and each with a record of criminal indictment. Adventurer Colonel Robert K. Brown, Marty Figueres, son of Costa Rica's #1 national hero Don Pepe, various high-ranking officers in the intelligence services of Latin America and the Far East, international smugglers, mercenaries, gun runners, petty hoodlums, private detectives, fanatics of various persuasions, and aides to part-time liberal angel and full-time magic Christian Stuart Mott.